Hello, it's John Heaton, and this evening going to review something a bit new for my channel. This album from Gerry Rafferty, City to City, released in 1978. And I'm not sure what made me play Gerry Rafferty the other day. His name just came to mind, and I thought I haven't heard his music in a while, so I listened to this one, Night Owl and Snakes and Ladders, which I think are his three best, and a couple of other songs. And it's just great to hear it again, because as I say, I was pretty close to those three albums back in the day and played them quite a bit since, but in the last few years haven't really played them. So I thought I'd review this one first. I'll probably get round to the other one. I think Snakes and Ladders might be my joint favourite with this one, probably. I was just doing some research, and I was quite surprised to learn how successful this was. I knew it was a big hit in the UK. It got to number 6, so not huge, but number 6 in the UK. But in the US, it was a number 1 album. The other thing I was reading was, well, obviously I knew he'd passed away. He died in 2011, age 63. And I don't think I was aware of his alcoholism to any great extent anyway. And I was quite shocked to hear of the problems he went through, because when you listen to his voice and his songs, he sounds quite content and serene, really. And you don't imagine him to be some kind of wild man who would trash hotel rooms like he apparently did in Mayfair a few years before he died. But anyway, so that's a bit sad to read that. This album was good album artwork, I think, and cover painted by John Patrick Byrne, who also did the painting for Night Owl and Snakes and Ladders. Recorded in the Chipping Norton Studios in Oxfordshire, which closed down, I think, in 1999, I was reading. And apart from Gerry Rafferty, who recorded quite a lot of his work there, other songs recorded there would include In the Army Now from Status Quo, Creep from Radiohead, and Too Shy from Kachagoogoo. So this album wasn't quite his first solo album, but it was his first big one for me anyway. He was earlier in a band called Stealers Wheel, and did some decent material, but I think this was his breakthrough artistically and commercially, really, or for me anyway. It was the first time I became aware of his name, and he became a household name pretty quickly on the strength of the single from this album, Baker Street, which I was just blown away again by the quality of that song. It is timeless. It was a deserved huge hit in many countries. Number 3 in the UK, number 2 in the US, number 1 in Canada. I'm not sure how it did in Europe. I haven't checked out that, but I would imagine it's the kind of song which is pretty global. Just superb sax. Actually, I should know this, who played the sax, but because I was looking up the musicians. We got Tommy Eyre on piano and keyboards, Hugh Burns on guitar, Nigel Jenkins on guitar as well, Gary Taylor on bass, and interestingly, Henry Spinetti is playing drums on many of the tracks. And Henry Spinetti would play on things like Gone Troppo, George Harrison. So, as ever, it's a small world. And yeah, great artwork. And this is the back cover. And not much information on my copy, because there's no inner sleeve on my copy anyway. There may have been a lyric sheet in the original, but I don't have it, unfortunately, on mine. So let's come to the album. It starts off very strongly with a track called The Ark. A piano-led ballad, beautifully sung. Rafferty's got an amazing voice, suited mainly, it has to say, to singing slower type numbers. He's not a rocker. I wouldn't describe him as a rocker, although he's done a couple of upbeat tracks, of course. But The Ark is a really nice opening to the album, top notch. And then the single Baker Street, what does it say? Class. And some really interesting lyrics in this song, which, with hindsight, could be viewed as autobiographical. He's got some dream about buying some land. He's going to give up the booze and the one-night stands. and then he'll settle down in some quiet little town and forget about everything. Quite sad, really, given what happened to him. So great words, and I remember him performing this on Top of the Pops at the time. I think it wasn't the video, I think he was there in the studio. Might be wrong. And then the album continues very strongly with Right Down the Line, which was another huge single, or saying huge, number 12 in the US, which is pretty decent. And it's one of his most beautiful tunes. It really is gorgeous. It's a really affecting love song. Up in his top 5, I would say, along with Baker Street. Then the title track, City to City, which the record company wanted to release as a single first, and then Gerry had to persuade them to release Baker Street. But City to City is a great, and it's pretty upbeat, actually. It's as close to a rocker as you're going to get with Gerry Rafferty, I think. And a whole lot of people on backing vocals on this track, and kind of whooshing train noises, and a really fun track. And the Stealing Time is another class ballad to end the side. Side 1 started with The Ark, finishes with Stealing Time. And it's just brilliant melody and really well sung. And then side 2, as is quite often the case, side 2 is not quite as good as side 1, but it's a little bit nitpicking to say that, because it starts off sublimely with Matty's Rag. Again, great saxophone in there, and a great tune, very catchy, and a great way to open side 2, really. And then we have a lovely piano ballad, Whatever's Written in Your Heart, which is quite slow but very moving. And then we've got a track called Home and Dry, which is quite pleasant, nothing brilliant, but nothing wrong with it at all. Island is quite an atmospheric song with nice words, very nice melody. And then Waiting for the Day is the closer, which is I think was a minor single in the US. It's not bad. It's not a bad closer. But I would say that the highlights for me would be more or less the whole of side 1, and then Matty's Rag, the opener of side 2. So this would be the first of several solid albums from Gerry Rafferty. And thank you for watching, and see you next time.